The first sound that morning wasn't birds, and it wasn't traffic. It was the ugly hollow clank of metal against wood, like somebody was trying to pry a flagpole out of bedrock with pure stubbornness. I slid out of bed on instinct, nudged the blinds with 2 fingers, and there she was in all her housecoat glory. Marla Pierce, president of the Cedar Hollow HOA, slippers sunk into my flower bed, arms wrapped around the aluminum mast I'd bolted beside the garage. She yanked like she was competing in some county fair strongman contest, face red, jaw locked. Then the hinge snapped. She toppled backward, disappeared into my petunias, and popped up clutching the antenna base like a war trophy. I didn't shout. I didn't rush out. I just grabbed my phone and took 12 pictures through the slats, one after another, the way you photograph a rare bird you know no one's going to believe you saw. That mast wasn't decoration. It was a high-band receiver tied into a little weather station I'd built out of licensed amateur radio gear and a data logger, clean, legal, nerdy. I'd been helping a university lab collect atmospheric noise samples. It wasn't national security, it was barometric pressure and propagation curves. Marla didn't care what it was, she cared how it looked. In her world, if she couldn't categorize it, it had to be dangerous. I made coffee, opened the back door to let the morning in, and waited for her voluntary confession. It didn't take long. She marched across the driveway dragging bent aluminum, chin high like a sheriff with a confiscated shotgun. "Your ugly stick is down," she announced, planting it on my welcome mat. "Neighborhood standards restored." "You're welcome, Marla," I said, all slow and polite. "You just committed vandalism on my property before I even finished my first cup. That's impressive time management." Her mouth tightened. Section 14, subsection C, structures resembling telecommunications equipment are prohibited. The board voted. "I'm simply enforcing." "You're not code enforcement," I said, tilting my head like I was admiring modern art. "You're a newsletter with legs." She loved the word escalate. It made her feel like a badge was about to appear on her cardigan. She huffed, promised fines, waved the twisted mast like a medieval lance, and stomped home across the cul-de-sac while curtains twitched and kids on scooters made wide, fascinated circles. I kept my voice level, my hands empty, my camera roll thick with evidence. The logger in the garage, smart little box, had already thrown a fit, recording the disconnect, timestamping the power loss, flagging a string of error pings to the research group. Where Marla saw a conspiracy, I saw a breadcrumb trail. By lunch, a single-page bulletin fluttered from every mailbox like cheap campaign literature. Unauthorized surveillance equipment identified and removed for resident safety. At the bottom, she'd signed it twice. Marla Pierce, HOA President and Community Watch Chair, because one hat wasn't dramatic enough. I chuckled, filed it, and texted a neighbor named Nate. "Do I frame this or bring it to show and tell?" He sent back a picture of 3 people on his porch reading the flyer like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls. Cedar Hollow loves a spectacle. It's what happens when the HOA pool closes for the season and everyone's bored. Around dusk, I heard engines before I saw them. Deep, even, unhurried. 2 dark SUVs rolled into the circle and eased to a stop in front of Marla's driveway. Doors opened, suits stepped out, badges flashed in that quick, professional way that says this isn't a costume. Conversations died. A kid's bike fell over in the street and kept spinning one back, well, like a metronome. Marla was halfway to my porch rehearsing fresh outrage when she noticed them. Her bravado caught in her throat. Then she turned it back on, louder. "This is neighborhood property enforcement," she said, knuckles white on the aluminum base. "That," the taller agent said calmly, "is federal property adjacent equipment for a licensed installation. Please set it down." The metal clanged on concrete. A few neighbors gasped. I leaned on my rail, coffee still warm. "It would be great to tell you I orchestrated every bit of this like some suburban chess master, but the truth is simpler. I didn't need to pull strings." Marla pulled everyone within reach, and then tied them around her own ankles. "Sir," the agent said, turning to me, "may we take a look at your setup?" "Garage is open," I said. "Just ignore the dust and the shamefully organized tool wall." I was raised by a dad who labeled everything. Marla followed us like a bloodhound, muttering about spies, foreigners, coded messages. She had a greatest hits album, and she played it on loop. The flashlights swept over shelves, the workbench, the coke spooled up neat as a cinnamon roll. Receivers, a logger, a few filters, my license framed crooked because I'm pretentious in tiny, harmless ways. The agent nodded. Looks standard. He was not performing for the crowd. He was checking boxes, gathering facts, balancing a town full of whispers against paperwork and serial numbers. That should have been the end. A scolding, a polite memo, maybe Marla trudging home to plot her next minor tyranny. But people like her don't take a step back when the world says enough. They build a stage and invite everyone to watch them fall. By midnight, she was out again, beam of a flashlight cutting across my lawn, the robed silhouette of a crusader hunting for proof inside a story she'd already decided was true. I opened the door and let the light hit me full in the chest. Lose something? I asked. I saw a raccoon, she said weakly. Near your shed. Raccoons love barometric pressure, I said. Big fans of ham radio law too. The next morning, my inbox filled with screenshots of Marla's emergency bulletin. By afternoon, she'd called a special session at the Cedar Hollow clubhouse. Folding tables, stale coffee, microphone that whined every time she inhaled. I didn't attend. I had a friend, Mrs. Alvarez, retired teacher, polite smile that says I will quietly ruin villains, with a phone propped on her purse. When I listened later, I laughed so hard I had to pause it and breathe. Marla stood behind the lectern like a wartime broadcaster, voice trembling with righteous purpose. Our neighborhood, she boomed, is under threat from within. Then came her masterpiece, a proposed bylaw that would let the board remove any external fixture deemed suspicious by majority vote. In short, she said, we need agility to protect aesthetics and security. Nate raised his hand. In shorter, you want legal cover for what you already did at Evans Place, right? Her smile twitched. Community order sometimes requires strong leadership. I didn't post commentary. I posted the raw recording. Nothing undercuts a performance like letting the audience hear the tone that wasn't meant to leave the room. By morning, the audio was in every group chat we had, sandwiched between soccer practice reminders and lost cat notices. Reactions ranged from, "This is wild," to, "I'm embarrassed for us." And when the vote finally came, the amendment died 21-3. The three were her two lieutenants, Tina, who loves gossip like oxygen, and Doug, who believes his landscaping certificate confers zoning authority, and Marla herself, clapping alone with both hands and a fixed smile. Backed into a corner, she did what bullies do when the crowd stops nodding. She faked the uniform. Citations appeared in mailboxes dressed up in official language with a seal that looked legitimate until you noticed the Latin motto spelled wrong and the fact that Cedar Hollow Enforcement Division doesn't exist. The letters accused half the street of petty violations. Curtain color visible from the road, a grill on the back deck, a mailbox leaning 2 degrees off-center, and attached a payment line that pointed to the HOA treasurer like a credit card swiper at a lemonade stand. I posted mine with a caption, "Hey, did anyone else get a ticket from Marla's Fantasy Police?" The thread exploded. It took less than a day for the black SUVs to circle back and explain the difference between a bylaw notice and a fraudulent document with a fabricated seal. The agent's tone never rose. He didn't need it to. "Ma'am," he said, "if you continue, you'll face charges." The air went thin with quiet. You'd think a cliff like that would make a person back away. Marla dug a little cave into the cliff and started decorating. The breaker panel on my house was pried open one night. The power cut while I was seasoning a cast iron skillet. My mailbox door lay in the road detached like a knocked-out tooth. The sprinkler valve flooded a corner of the lawn mysteriously, which is a funny kind of vandalism, the sort that looks like gardening. I didn't rant, I documented. Time-stamped photos, a utility report noting manual tampering, a folder full of neat little breadcrumbs with dates in the corner. I sent a polite email to the same contact I'd met twice now, subject line, "Escalation of neighbor interference." Documentation attached. I didn't have to say more than that. So when the SUVs returned again and the conversation on Marla's porch lasted 20 minutes and ended with her being escorted, not cuffed, not dragged, but escorted, down the steps and into the back seat, the cul-de-sac stood in a kind of stunned silence that felt like a storm had just edged north of us and missed by a mile. People breathed. Kids played longer that night. For the first time in weeks, I heard laughter float over hedges that wasn't mean. She came back, of course. People like Marla always do, just more polished and more dangerous. The housecoat traded for a tailored suit, the fistful of flyers upgraded to a leather briefcase, and 2 lawyers with faces like shut doors. Every doorstep got a thick paper letter, Cedar Hollow HOA versus Evan Cole. I actually laughed out loud reading the complaint. Blaming me for provoking unnecessary federal intervention is like blaming a barometer for rain. My attorney, Grant, a man who speaks in tidy bullets and brings his own stapler to court, skimmed and said, "We'll dismantle this and expose misuse of HOA funds while we're at it." The first hearing felt like a high school reunion in the hallway. Neighbors whispering, someone handing out mints, Doug pretending he didn't know anyone. The judge ran a tight ship, the kind of woman whose eyebrows can stop a conversation without the gavel. Marla's counsel tried to submit those fake citations as evidence. The judge looked over her glasses and said, "Counselor, are you asking me to accept a document with a fabricated seal into this record?" He backpedaled so fast the court reporter probably wrote, "Skidding." Grant stood, laid out my license, the project letters, the utility report, the inspection notes the agents had made. No flair, just receipts. Marla popped up mid-sentence and accused me of manipulating the room. The gavel cracked the air like a thunderclap. "Sit down, Miss Pierce, or I will hold you in contempt." She sat, still vibrating. I wish I could say it ended there, but showmen hate empty stages. At 9 o'clock on a weeknight, we all got a robocall, distorted voice, the kind of modulation you do with a free app, warning that foreign interference has penetrated Cedar Hollow, and that if we see something and don't say something, we are complicit. At midnight, she mounted speakers outside her second-story window and blasted the cul-de-sac with a monologue about traitors and spies and the man on the corner, which was me because of course it was me, and she swung spotlights across driveways until one froze on my front door and stayed there, humming. I stepped onto the porch and let the light paint me, arms crossed, one eyebrow up, the kind of smile you give a toddler who's drawn a dragon on the wall with a purple marker. Then the engines came again. 3 SUVs this time. Firm, final. Doors opened. Agents fanned. Procedures unfolded exactly the way procedures unfold when your folder has enough tabs and your emails have enough attachments. "Ma'am," the lead said, badge catching porch light. "Step away from the equipment. You're under investigation for obstruction, harassment, and distribution of fraudulent documents. Don't resist." She laughed, a high, brittle sound that made even Tina flinch. "Resist? I lead. You work for me. This is my community." She pointed at me like I'd stolen her crown. "Arrest him." No one moved. The agents pushed inside when she darted back. A crash, a shout, the clatter of something expensive hitting tile. Then the quiet kind of quiet that means the adrenaline just hit its limit. They walked her out, not triumphant, not cruel, just steady, and a neighborhood that had been living on a diet of drama for weeks finally let out a long breath. You don't cheer in moments like that. You whisper. You look at your shoes. You walk your dog in a wider arc. You decide you're going to be kinder this month and then forget the next day. We're human, messy on good days. In the days that followed, Cedar Hollow did the business of formal repair. Emergency meetings, recall petitions, an election conducted with baked cookies and more civility than we'd had all year. Tina resigned in tears. Doug started mowing at night, like he was hiding from questions that followed him across the grass. The 2 older board members who had nodded along, just to end Marla's speeches finally, said they were tired. Mrs. Alvarez baked a pie and left it on my porch with a note that said, "For staying calm when I couldn't." Grant forwarded a short email from the same agent who'd been to my driveway 3 times. "Thank you for your cooperation. Keep your records." It read like the period at the end of a long, breathless paragraph. If you asked me what snapped in Marla, the moment the line between strict and unhinged vanished, I'd tell you it wasn't the first clank of metal or the fake citations or even the lawsuit. It was smaller. It was that shift people feel when the crowd stops nodding and starts watching with their arms folded. Power by intimidation has a short shelf life, and when it spoils, it stinks up the whole block. She didn't understand radios or weather data or what licensed amateur actually means. She understood narrative, and for a while, it worked. But narratives break when the facts have timestamps. On a quiet evening a week later, I sat on the porch with a mug that didn't need coffee, just warmth, and watched the cul-de-sac practice being normal again. Kids played knockout at the adjustable hoop. Someone grilled something that smelled like marinade and hope. Nate waved from the corner and shouted, "No new bylaws today," which has become our running joke. Mrs. Alvarez joined me with 2 tea bags and a look toward Marla's dark house. Blinds drawn, mailbox empty. "You think she'll come back?" she asked. "People like that always try," I said. "But once the spotlight hits them, not the one they shine on others, the one that swings back, it's never the same." This isn't a victory speech. I didn't win anything. I kept my head, kept my paper trail, and let a woman who needed to be in charge of something pick a fight with physics, patience, and procedure. The only lesson I've got is simple. You don't have to scream to be heard. You just have to write things down and wait for the engines. Justice in the suburbs doesn't always arrive with trumpets. It slides in on rubber tires at dusk while lawn sprinklers tick in the background and the neighbor's dog pauses mid-bark, like even he respects the moment. If you've lived through something like this, a neighborhood feud that turned into a saga, a board that forgot what it was for, a person who mistook fear for leadership, I want to hear it. Tell me where you think the line is between order and control, what you would have done differently, whether you think I let it go on too long or not long enough. Drop your take in the comments. Argue with each other respectfully. Share this with the one friend who keeps threatening to run for HOA president. And if you want more stories told straight, no grandstanding, just the mess and the lesson, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and stick around. Cedar Hollow isn't special. It's just us, trying to live next to each other without losing our minds.